A year ago, I was sitting with you in Butte House, so simple big picture terms, and England had voted one way on Brexit, Scotland had voted the other way, and therefore it seemed pretty clear, and certainly clear to you, that this was a parting of the ways, and independence for Scotland was an inevitable result of all of this. And yet things have changed badly this year, for your point of view. Why?
I'm not going to say anything different, and you wouldn't expect me to. I still believe independence is the best future for Scotland. I still believe that whatever future Scotland chooses for itself, and you know what side of that I'm on, that is a future that shouldn't be imposed on us. It's one we should have the ability to choose and decide for ourselves. Now, I recognise, and this was very evident, I think, to everybody through the course of the general election campaign, that there is, as you say, a lot of confusion. This is a complex issue, and people in Scotland, I'm sure it's the same in many other parts of the UK, people want to see the clarity emerge about the state of the relationship between the UK and the EU. Now, at that point, what I've said is that we will look at that and determine at that stage if Scotland should then have the right to choose between whatever that new relationship with the UK is going to be or choosing to be an independent country.
So let's try and nail this down a bit more, because you've said in the past that as soon as you could see the overall picture where we're going, it was pretty clear, you could then take a decision on the second independence referendum. Now, I talked to the Prime Minister last week, and she pointed out that the European Parliament's going to take a decision in October, and the idea is the British Parliament, shortly before that, should take the same decision, or should take the decision. So by the relatively early autumn, we should have the broad picture of where we're going.
That's what I understand to be the case. Now, I should caveat that by saying I'm not in control of that timetable.
Neither
but as you say, based on what the Prime Minister has said, based on what the European Commission is saying, by round about the autumn of this year, we should have some clarity about that future relationship.
So between October and the end of the year, you will be able to tell us whether or not there is going to be a second independence referendum.
That's when I will be able to look at that and make a judgment about what I think the next appropriate steps are for Scotland, and I will then report that to the Scottish Parliament and to the people of Scotland.
There's not really enough time then for a second referendum before the UK leaves the EU, is there? If we're leaving in March 2019 and you have to take a decision in the autumn of 2018, there isn't enough time to take the decision, have the referendum, leave the UK and stay in the EU.
Well, we'll make decisions on timing when we get to that point and look at that. But you know, we've also got a situation, and I accept that the detail of this has yet to emerge, but we've also got
the weeks pass at a speed that you can't control.
Hold on a little second here. We've got a situation where the Prime Minister is saying that there will now be a 2-year, or she calls it an implementation period, I think everybody else calls it a transition period, where, as I understand it, and this is yet to be agreed, and hopefully it will be agreed soon, that will effectively be a steady state transition. Now, I will make judgments, and they are my judgments. I have to put them to the Scottish Parliament about what I believe is in the best interest of Scotland, protecting our best interests in all circumstances.
Do you ever sit late at night and think that maybe the Scottish people no longer want independence in the same way? I'm going to quote you Kirsty Blackman, your Deputy Leader at Westminster. She said recently, "I don't think most folk in their daily lives give two hoots about whether Scotland is a member of the Union. The constitutional issues are not the biggest concern for an awful lot of people. I very rarely talk Scottish independence in the Chamber because I talk about things that matter to the people of Aberdeen."
Well, that was a two-part question, so give me the space to answer both parts if you don't mind. Firstly, you asked me about public opinion on independence. Yes. Most of the opinion polls that have been carried out in Scotland since the referendum in 2014 show that support for independence is either the same or in many, many cases has actually increased. So we saw a poll just before Christmas.
Or some that say lower.
The majority, though, would say that support for independence has grown. There was one that put support for independence at 49%. Of course, in 2014, the outcome, the yes vote was 45%. On Kirsty's point, Kirsty was making a point there that I've been making all of my... the point she was making, which is one I've made throughout my entire political life, is that independence is not some constitutional abstraction. It is about the living standards, the society, the economy we have, and that relationship between how we're governed and those conditions for Scotland is the important relationship, and that is the point that Kirsty was making.